First, the Prime Minister today, patting himself on the back for preparing more energy bill relief in the budget, but it's his own government's policies that are putting power bills through the roof in the first place. It's the government's emissions obsession that's killing the economics of coal-fired power and making it so much harder to develop new gas-fired power, even though that's what we need to keep the lights on. 3 headlines today yet again highlight our energy policy insanity. First, the Australian Financial Review, which exposed the danger to New South Wales power supply if the country's biggest power station, Eraring, closes as planned in August next year. Rooftop solar power, well, it's abundant during the day but not existent at night, means that coal-fired power from Eraring is hardly economic because it can only get a decent return at night, even though we still rely on coal for 60% of our total electricity. So what's the impact? Well, it means that because federal government subsidies for wind and solar have so distorted the market, we now need state subsidies for coal-fired power, or these big generators that we need to keep the lights on would all go under. So taxpayers end up paying 3 times over. First, we pay as consumers through high power bills, and that's because there are laws that force generators to buy renewable energy certificates. Second, we pay as federal taxpayers through the budget for all the energy welfare handouts. And third, we're hit again as state taxpayers because of the subsidies needed to keep these coal-fired power stations running or to help big players like smelters keep them going with subsidised power, like in Victoria. Another headline today also showed how this is all going to get worse, not better, thanks to the Albanese government's hard left green agenda. As reported in The Australian, there is yet another attempt by tax-funded green groups to sabotage fossil fuel developments. This time, it's a new coal mine in Queensland near Moranbah in the Bowen Basin, which is already home to some of our biggest coal mines. The Australian Conservation Foundation, backed by the Environmental Defenders Office, that's right, you fund them through your taxes, well, it is challenging the State Land Court for the approval that the new Whitehaven mine will and shouldn't go ahead, it says. It's just been given the approval, but they don't want it to go ahead from the Queensland government. Now, their argument is that burning coal increases emissions, which causes climate change, which in turn harms the human rights of children and Indigenous people. Now, it's a pretty long bow, but it's drawing on a previous Land Court decision to block an earlier coal development on similar grounds. And it shows the determination of green groups that you're being forced to fund them as taxpayers to stop all and any new fossil fuel developments, even though coal and gas remain 2 of our 3 biggest exports. And without these developments, there are no plausible substitutes in many of our industrial processes, nor do we have another way to replace all that export revenue that comes into government coffers and pays for our high standard of living, our hospitals, the NDIS, our defence assets, the pension, for everything we have in Australia. Now, the consequence of this was highlighted in a third story, also in The Australian, and that's at one of our largest manufacturing businesses. The plastics producer Qenos is likely to close due to the high price of electricity and gas, making us even more dependent on imports for everyday essential items. So adherence to the climate cult by successive governments, which the Albanese government has taken to new heights, is making you and me poorer and our country weaker. And further subsidies in the budget, as the PM was crowing about today, are just going to make a bad situation worse. It's a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Meanwhile, a new poll, albeit commissioned, it seems, by the minerals industry, shows that 82% of us support the opening of new resource projects. 74% support the resource sector generally, including 51% support for it, even among Greens voters.